From dreams of medicine to building a business that helps others, David Birchmore's story is one of resilience, purpose, and courage. In this episode of MarketPulse, he reveals the turning points that reshaped his entire career and his life.
And it was great. There was lots of blood, lots of guts, and gore. Really enjoyed it. Wanted to be doctor more than ever.
That's a trap that a lot of people fall into, is believing, conditioned to believe that a successful career and the best job in the world is the most highly paid one with the nicest bonuses and freebies. And it takes a lot of years of maturity for a lot of us to realise that actually that's the thing that's driving us to an early grave.
I'd go to work, I'd be crying on the train, have palpitations, and I did 11, 12 months of this job. It was in Harley Street in London, 26, and someone asked me to go and work in Harley Street. What young, arrogant man wasn't going to say no to being headhunted to work there? As it turns out, it was absolutely horrific, and it nearly broke me. I walked in one day and I said to the boss, I quit, and I'm leaving. And I did.
It's about how much time are you going to get to spend each day doing the sorts of things that make you truly happy. And is it going to give you enough time doing that to balance out the stuff that won't be so fulfilling? Why do we threaten people? If you don't study really hard, you're going to end up in a call centre. Why is a call centre a bad?
I would never go back to full-time employment. I was probably unemployable and a pain in the ass from day one.
I couldn't go back to being told what to do anymore. Now that I have that freedom and know I can be successful.
What I realised fairly early on is that sharing people's stories is exceptionally powerful. Making real human connection is super powerful.
What happens when you stop waiting for permission and finally back yourself? Welcome to this week's MarketPulse Pros and Pioneers, where this week I'm interviewing David Birchmore. David's on a mission to help 1,000 people leave the jobs they hate and build lives that they truly love. After 20 years in healthcare and working for others, he realised he wanted more time with his young children and the freedom to work on his own terms. Post-COVID, he took the leap and turned his long-standing interest in entrepreneurship into a full-time reality. David now runs Via Nova, a global consultancy that guides people through the transition from unfulfilling careers into thriving businesses. Alongside his consultancy, he also hosts a podcast where real people share their stories of change, showing that backing yourself really can work out. At his core, David is driven by a simple truth. He just loves helping people unlock a better future. David, big welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you on.
Thanks ever so much for having me. A pleasure to be with you. And thank you for the amazing and lovely introduction.
We do our best. But genuinely, so for a little bit of context for folks watching along, I joined your podcast and I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. So this is kind of the return trip for us. And I will pop the link for that podcast in the show notes below. So if you want to see my version of David interviewing me, if you're mad enough to want to listen to that story, then you're welcome to do so. So I want to rewind back, David, because for the longest time you were in healthcare. But what predated healthcare? What was David as a young man? What were your dreams and ambitions at that point?
Okay, so I wanted to be a doctor from about the age of 4. I remember going round, and as people always ask, "Oh, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And I say, "Doctor." I don't really remember why or how that came around, but that was very much, and that was it for the longest time. I don't think I ever wanted to do anything else. I remember, and I've spoken about this before on various channels, giving CPR to a giant pink panther teddy I had, and that was it. I was going to be a doctor. That was it. Age 16, I was away at boarding school, and I went on a pre-medical degree day, basically, for Nottingham University to sell medics, their course. And it was great. There's lots of blood, lots of guts and gore. Really enjoyed it. Wanted to be a doctor more than ever. And then it came to the academic bit, and they said, Oh, so you need A's and A stars at GCSE and A's at A level. Okay. Dream shattered. I didn't have A's at GCSE and I certainly wasn't going to get A's at A level. So that was it. That was the end of the dream. There were lots of tears, lots of weeks of worry. And then I decided to use a career test that we'd looked at some point at school. And I found radiotherapy, so the treatment of people with cancer. And I thought, great, it still gets me into the medical world and allows me to help people, which, as you've already alluded to, is really the very core of everything. So that's what I did. So I ended up at university. So actually, healthcare is all I ever really knew. Apart from working in Weatherspoons, the day I turned 18, I started my first shift in Weatherspoons and lasted about 3.5 years. Dare I say, the best job I ever had. I loved it. I had such a good time.
But I think you've already kind of gotten to the crux of this episode, and it's the point of your business. It's the conversations that we've had. Is that at an early age you'd already identified not just the career path that you wanted to go into, but why you wanted to do it. You already kind of knew that yourself, right? Which is really unusual for a lot of people. Not many people figure that out until they're old and, you know, they've lost all their hair, which is where I'm at, right? Like well, to be fair, I was quite young when I lost my hair, but I think I wish more people could see that, because that kind of self-awareness is really important for.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy, right? And I think I have always known deep down. I've obviously had lots of different careers, lots of paths. I've been very fortunate to have a great career across the years. And I think knowing what I wanted to do has both been a help and a hindrance. Because when I realized I couldn't be a doctor, that really did throw me, it really did stall me. And I think fortunately never quite recovered from it in many respects, although I look back now and realize actually I wouldn't want to be a doctor. Not with all the rubbish that's going on. And love the NHS, love all the people that work in it. But I clearly have a role in helping people escape it now because it isn't satisfactory. So I think I was young when I knew that I wanted to help people. And it has taken me probably till now really to kind of mold that and shape it. But the whole 20, 25 years of my career has molded that and shaped it and allowed me to define what I want. I grew up in a vicarage. At the age of 7, I remember homeless people, desperate people who were sad, who'd been given bad news, who'd had problems knocking on our door. We lived in a very deprived area in Essex, and my dad was a vicar, and he was there to help and support people. And I think that rubbed off. Both of my parents were there helping people. And even when my dad wasn't there, and I can remember one chap in particular, a real homeless guy, smelly, dirty, very sad life, would come and sit in our kitchen, and my mum would just talk to him. So I think that's really where that deep down need and desire and want to help people actually stems from.
That's amazing. What an interesting story. And I guess that helps make you aware of empathy and compassion and all the things that are necessary for helping people. And I always say that like nobody gets into a career for 15 years if they don't really enjoy it, right? Even if it is just aspects of what they've done. And my career in retail was a similar sort of length, right? And I'm not going to say I hated the entire time. I absolutely didn't. I stayed too long is what I'd say. But there were elements, and quite a lot of elements in that job that I really got a kick out of and I really enjoyed and drove me forwards. Was there, in your time in healthcare, like, well, first of all, what is a career in healthcare look like? And secondly, were there times when you knew that there was something more waiting for you, that you were kind of waiting for the right moment?
I think I've always had itchy feet, always wanted to move on to the next thing. I was quite driven as a young man, exceptionally arrogant. I wanted to save the NHS, if not the world, single-handedly. As a fresh graduate, that was it. I was going in and I was going to climb the tree and, save the dying NHS. And it was in a state 25 years ago, but nowhere near what it is now. And I think that's what I wanted to do. And I was always just seeking the next best thing. And I knew that healthcare was the right thing. And I loved working clinically. And I had the opportunity to leave the clinical environment And I think that had probably always been coming, if I'm honest. I knew fairly early on in my degree that I didn't want to be a treatment radiographer, as we were called, forever. I didn't want to be that person. And it wouldn't satisfy what I wanted. So when I left and I kind of joined the corporate world and corporate healthcare into one of the big companies, I knew it was the right thing and I enjoyed it. I loved it. I loved traveling the world. I lived abroad, I had amazing experiences, but I was always searching for the next thing. The next pay rise really is what I was looking for. What could I get? How could I do it? And the foolishness of youth really thinking that I could climb this ladder, probably without doing too much work, and just swan around Europe and America, drinking, living off being English, foolish. But it was the right thing at the time.
Yeah. And I think that's a trap that a lot of people fall into, though, is believing, and we're almost conditioned to believe that a successful career and a happy job and the best job in the world is the most highly paid one with the nicest bonuses and freebies that come with the job. And it takes a lot of years of maturity for a lot of us to realize that actually that's the thing that's driving us to an early grave a lot
absolutely.
of the time.
And I see it now more and more, and I understand it more than I ever have done. And I think looking back, yes, it's the innocence of youth, the ambition of youth, and lockdown's personality. I hope that my children have a different perspective from day one. And I think they will, because I think the system is changing as a whole. But I think I was in that trap, and it took a job that I thought would be the best thing in the world and the most prestigious thing in the world to actually break me. And that was my first out of healthcare, or at least the first time I thought, this absolutely is not what I want to be chasing any longer. And I'd go to work, I'd be crying on the train, I'd have palpitations, and I did, 11, 12 months at this job. And I will share, it was in Harley Street in London. I was young, 26, and someone asked me to go and work in Harley Street. Now, if you know anything about healthcare, you know that Harley Street is probably one of the most prestigious places in the world to work. What young, arrogant man wasn't going to say no to being headhunted to work there? As it turns out, it was absolutely horrific, and it nearly broke me. And I walked in one day, and I said to the boss, I quit, and I'm leaving. And I did. And I moved to Devon. I went back to working clinically, and that was the start again of, I guess, the new phase of life and a very big transition.
Like a lot of people will give certain employers a tough time of things, right? But I'm a big believer that, yes, there are some toxic workplaces to work in and some work cultures that are outdated and need updating to 2025 model. But I actually think that for a lot of people, they're in the wrong culture for them. They believe that they're a specific sort of person and that they can deal with that environment, and actually find out that they can't, and therefore it becomes toxic for them, not necessarily for everyone, but for them. And I think that's the bit that we need to help people understand a bit better, is what is it about, it's less about the prestigious nature of the job or the role or the title or the money that comes with it. It's about how much time are you going to get to spend each day doing the sorts of things that make you truly happy? And is it going to give you enough time doing that to balance out the stuff that won't be so fulfilling? But to your point, you've alluded there, you kind of started on this path to then bring yourself closer to the things that you enjoy doing again, and move back towards that more simple way of doing things.
It's not right for you. It's not right for that individual. I think so many people are brought up and almost forced into a role because they think it's what they should be doing. Lots of people come from families that maybe are medics, maybe military, lawyers, and they are forced almost down this path of a career. It's never what they want to do, but they feel like it's what they should do. And I think that's where problems start. When I talk about it, and I talk about it having a career built on a fault line, because there's a crack, and it will appear at some point. I don't necessarily think I was forced into being in healthcare, but I think having known what I wanted to do, it forced me down a path that maybe I would have taken slightly differently if I'd not had that real burning desire to be a doctor at such a young age. I don't know. I can't say. But I think, there are so many people who are on a career path like that. And it's about finding what is right for that person.
It is. It is. And I think I wish career guidance for young people lent itself to that, because I think we kind of condition young people to believe that they either need to be a really well-paid, high-earning professional of some sort, or they're going to be left collecting bins and working on cars. And I don't believe that there's any differentiation between the two. It's simply about what makes you happy. And we need people to be able to do all of those roles and more. We need to stop. It seems to be a very British thing, actually, and certainly a Western education system, where we belittle manual services and trades people and things, almost threats to young children who don't study. And I have a massive problem with that, because I have utmost respect. You know, when a plasterer gives me a quote that is eye-watering, I accept the quote generally, unless I think they're really trying to screw me, because I know that plastering is an art form. I've tried to plaster. I've done plastering in my first house. I was all right at it by the time I plastered the entire house from top to bottom. But would I want to do it again? Absolutely not. Could I do it as well as a plasterer? No chance. It takes years of skill, determination, but why do we threaten people? You know, if you don't study really hard, you're going to end up in a call center. Why is a call center a bad job?
Absolutely.
I know many people who started at the bottom in a call center and are now have their own call center company, who are CEOs, who are executive directors, who, you know, and there are so many careers out there that we shun because they're seen as menial. But actually, highbrow jobs aren't always what they're cracked up to be either. So it's like, when are we going to wake
Absolutely.
up?
And you know that I've spoken about it before, and I post about it quite a bit on LinkedIn. Being stuck in a highbrow career is as dangerous as being a plasterer or working in a call center or doing something for yourself. It just doesn't really make much difference. And you're right. Why should it be any different? And plastering, painting, decorating. I look around the state of my lounge. I can't paint at all. And people need those jobs. And of course, the irony now is that as AI becomes more prevalent, the chances are some of those more manual jobs will probably be the ones that stay and are sustained through the technology.
They're safe, right?
So that's, it's very interesting. And sorry, we kind of diverted from COVID.
Yeah, it's quite all right. I enjoying the little sidetracks. So yeah, COVID happened. Where were you when COVID happened? And
it was
what
a
the
really
impact of that on you?
interesting time, as it was, I think, for so many people, and definitive for very many people. I'd actually been made redundant at the back end of 2019. And I thought, right, time to go out on my own, fulfill that dream that started to kind of fizz up before then. And I got a recruiter called me and said, "Oh, would you come and do this job?" And I thought, yeah, sure, why not? I was unemployed for 5 weeks in the end. Good, back to a good salary. I was a medical rep for the Southwest, so not traveling the whole country, which is what I had been doing. And I think that was November 2019. So just getting into the stride of everything. And then there was this funny thing going on where people buying masks, and there was some rumblings about what might happen. And I remember my now wife and I sitting in Salisbury the weekend that the plane flew over from China and landed at Liverpool. I was watching this on TV thinking, it's all a bit weird. Something's not quite right. And I think we stopped at a petrol station on the way home and bought some masks and some hand gel, because it seemed that was what everyone had been doing. And then, of course, the big lockdown. We moved in together. We squashed our 4 children and the 2 of us into a 2-bed house so we could be together. Homeschooling was the biggest challenge of it all, which just cemented that I was never, ever meant to be a teacher. As much as I might want to help people, I think I want to help adults, not children. God bless any teachers. And I was immediately stopped from working. I was very fortunate that I was employed the whole way through. But working for a diagnostics company, no one was doing anything. So I sat at home. The drinks came out a bit earlier and earlier. I actually went on a diet and lost a load of weight because we realized that this could get quite serious if we didn't. And I love spending time with the kids. I look back at the photos, and my children now will say, "Oh God, we hate COVID. It was horrible. It was horrendous." The reality is, I'm not sure how much they actually remember. And when we look back at the photo, we had a nice garden. It was sunny. We played. I went online and we'd find activities to do. There were lots of groups that came out for parents to entertain their children. So we did a bit of schoolwork in the morning. Sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. And then we'd have fun. And we'd go on walks. We used to walk 2-3 miles a day, exploring the area we'd never really seen because we were too busy working. And it was just a good time. Don't get me wrong. I know it's horrendous for so many people, and it was truly horrific. But for us, in our little bubble, it was a good time. And what it really made both my wife and I feel was we didn't want to go back to the way things had been beforehand. Like many, many people, we are not alone in this. And I'd already had this thought of starting a cleaning company. So it's funny you should touch on menial jobs, and I'll come back to that in a minute. And as COVID kind of ended and lockdown released, we said, let's start this. We created a logo. I'd done all of this during lockdown. Created a Facebook page and asked a few friends, and suddenly we had some work. And then I joined a networking group against my better judgment. And suddenly we had offices to clean, and we had people looking for building cleans and end of tenancies and all sorts. And suddenly this idea had ballooned. All the while, my wife was working nights in a care home. I was still a rep for the company I've been working for, and we balanced the two. And I look back and it really makes me chuckle because I'm not really sure how we managed it. It was crazy time. But it was the right thing. And there was just that feeling of joy. We were doing our own thing. That actually we could, if we built this, we could spend time with our children and make that COVID bubble and the way we'd lived during COVID maybe more of a reality. The thought of having to drive to Reading for a 7 o'clock theatre appointment with my work, just the fun, the idea of it all just vanished. I was like, I don't want this anymore. And then my wife, on a walk one Sunday, fell off the seawall down the road here and snapped her leg in two. I say that's because she wanted to get out. It was Easter Sunday. So I say it's because she wanted to get out eating lamb, which she doesn't like. And I had an amazing piece of lamb, which went in the bin. She snapped her leg in two, and I was suddenly left with 4 kids, 2 jobs, and fairly minor in the grand scheme of things. But that was the turning point, and that was it. So I once again quit my job. Before we planned, so we had a plan to move forward, work the side by side, see what we do, raise some money, keep some money aside. But actually, Space Falling Off the Wall really kind of just catapulted that decision. And I do not regret that decision in any way, shape, or form. And that was really the start of living the lifestyle and that ambitious lifestyle that we wanted and that we have.
I love that. I love that turning point. And I think that's true of almost every guest we've had on the show, is that there was a crucible that led them where they're meant to be, the final turning point for people. And it's quite often that moment of either clarity or catastrophe, right? It is a case of, for many of us, sadly, some people crumble by the wayside, and it's really, really tough for those people. But for some of us, it is really that moment where we finally get out of our cocoon and spread our wings and figure out what it is that we're being pushed towards doing. And so you set out on building your career consultancy whilst launching a podcast at the same time.
Thank you.
So congratulations on the podcast as well, because I know how many episodes are you in now? 15,
I've
is it?
actually just launched 30 today.
30,
Yeah.
Good grief. Right, so yeah, you're flying now. Well done.
Thank you.
You know, it's so hard to get past episode 10 even for so many people. What's been the hardest part since setting out on your own? Was there a point where you just thought, "Do you know what, I've made a mistake here. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this"?
Yeah, monthly, weekly, daily, sometimes hourly. No, look, you know what it's like. It's there are hard times, and I will be the first to admit that there are tears, there are tantrums, there are days I want to jack it all in and find a job, and then I stop and I think what I actually have, and my children will always come first. That's why I left full-time employment. So on the days where it's bad and it's hard, I then remember, actually, I've got school run. I can get my kids. My son's got a rugby match. I'll be at a rugby match. So that outweighs all the hardships. And look, it's not easy. Being employed is, for the most part, a cushy little number. You have your pay at the end of the month. You're told what to do. You have a support team around you that when you need something, when you have an IT problem, you have someone to go to. When you have a finance problem, you have someone to go to. You submit your receipts and suddenly you get paid your expenses. Well, I do all of that and I love it. But I also surround myself with the right people who help me on that route. And I think that's the key to it, is finding the right people and meeting amazing people, making connections like you and I have done, where you can ask questions, you can have that support to see you through some of those really hard times. But quite simply, I would never go back to full-time employment. I couldn't. I was probably unemployable and a pain in the ass from day one. It's just taken me 20 odd years to work that out.
I think that's why you and I collect so well, right? Like, we're both very much in that same boat now. And like, yeah, there's been times when, since starting my own business, I've thought, you know what, I should, but this is really tough. Cash flow is not where I wanted it to be at times. And, you know, I'm looking around the house and I'm thinking, you know what, I could be getting paid 3 times what I'm currently earning at that point in time. And then I think, yeah, nobody would employ you anymore, Paul, because you've just, yeah, you've broken yourself in that regard, because I couldn't go back to being told what to do anymore. I now that I have that freedom, and now that I know that I can be, in some modicum of the word, successful, you know, in however we're going to view that word, I enjoy that too much to go back to being told what to do and criticized in the way that I do it. Like, and that for me, as a neurodiverse person, as an ADHD dad, that's the bit I struggle with the heaviest, because when I look back on my career now, knowing now what I know about myself and the way my neurodiversity is, I just think everything I've ever been criticized for was out of my control. Because, and it's the same for a lot of people, right? We go to work to do a good job. Nobody goes to work to do a bad job. But I've never once in that 15-year career had any conversation with anyone in any serious capacity about neurodiversity. And had I realized my traits, and I struggle to call them anything negative, because I love being ADHD. And don't get me wrong, I know there are plenty of people out there who absolutely hate being ADHD because they are far worsely afflicted than I am. And what is a superpower for me isn't a superpower for other people. So don't get me wrong, I sympathize with that and empathize with it. But for me, it was a superpower. But for everything that I struggled with, I now know that actually I did give it my best. It wasn't that I wasn't trying hard enough. It was that I'm incapable of those things, because that's just not the way my brain works. And so, if for no other reason than the fact that it's given me the space to understand myself better, I'm so happy that I did set out on my own journey.
And that's so important. I think you are not alone in thinking and feeling that. And people are so compressed by that traditional 9 to 5 that we talk about. And employers, are obsessed with people working to rule. And there's a place for that. And again, great that some people do, but it doesn't give that flexibility for people that think or work differently. And I think that's why so many people feel so unhappy and restless and just don't quite fit in, because you're trying to be molded to a system that doesn't really work for everybody. And the sooner we realize that, better. And of course, the irony of it all is probably for you and I is that if we were to go for a job, the chances are might be where you're a bit overqualified or underqualified or overqualified, and you might get bored. Instead of seeing it as a real positive and saying, well, look at all this experience you've got, come on board. Hang on, you've applied for a job where you want to take, a lower grade, come work for us. We'll use you and build you up again. But people don't see that. They just see, oh, hang on, you've been a company director, you've done your own thing. Well, no, why would you want to come and do this again?
Why would you want to?
So short-sighted. And that, for me, sums up that whole kind of 9-to-5 corporate culture.
And I think everybody, like in 2025, I think a lot of people are stuck in that way of thinking. I was talking with a guy the other day. So a good friend of mine is looking for consultancy work for startups and small businesses. I put a post out on LinkedIn. He's a very good friend of mine. He doesn't want to be named publicly. He just wants to find a bit of quiet, private work that he can help people with, or for a couple of months to help, him in his situation as he is at the moment. And I was talking with a guy who was interested in his help, and he could not get his head around the idea that I was not benefiting commercially from helping my friend. He's like, I don't understand why you're helping him if you're not working for him or you're not getting paid by him. And he actually got to the point where he asked me, have you built an AI that's really clever? And fair play to you if you have, that you're pretending is your friend and you're just going to pass me information from this AI. And I was like, right, we're going to take your tinfoil hat off. I'm not that clever. And actually, no, I'm not transactionally driven. I just want to help my friend. But that attitude is not uncommon. That is not unusual. And we laugh about it. But how sad is it that that's the world that we live in now, that people assume that's my motivation?
Yeah.
That aside, I want to bring us back a little bit on track. So you've got a podcast, 30 episodes in, called Get a Shift. Why start that? What was your purpose behind that, David?
It was actually never in the initial plan with my business. I think I fell into it. What I realized fairly early on is that sharing people's stories is exceptionally powerful. Making real human connection is super powerful. And as you've just alluded to, getting away from that transactional feeling that so many people seem to have. So I started it. In true me style, just went headlong into it, created some imagery, read up how to do it, found a platform, and it said create 3 episodes before you get too far. So I did exactly that. And I linked with someone on LinkedIn, a GP, who's doing some amazing research around watercress. And he was my first guest. And I guess it has just snowballed from there. And it's been so fascinating to meet so many different people from all walks of life. And the whole premise of the podcast is to showcase that career change is absolutely possible. And as I'm sure you are well aware, when you see a real life story, it's much more interesting than me sitting there saying, oh yes, well, you can do this, this, and this, and this. And that really helps you get out of the job that you're stuck in. But when you see that people have done it from all walks of life, I've had that GP, I've had other GPs who've gone on to do other things because they don't feel they can work any longer in the NHS and the way it's functioning. I've had teachers, I've had civil servants, I've had ex-rugby players from both the local and English team. It's just been a really fascinating journey. And it's been nice to look, because I managed to speak to some of my friends. One of which, a guy called Ollie, we went to boarding school together. I've known him probably longer than I've known most people. And we shared a room for a very long time as well. And we've had very different careers. And he's done amazing things. He runs a marketing company. And he's worked with Liquid Guest. And he's just started his own company. But it's really fascinating to hear his story, having known him all those years, and to understand how people develop and change. And I hope that people watching it, and my subscribers are few and far between. I can't even claim my mum's one of them because I don't think she really understands what a podcast is. But if she could, she would. But those figures are growing. But actually, for me, it's not about that. It's about helping as many people as I can on my mission to help 1,000 people leave the jobs they hate. And if I can just help one person by sharing someone else's story, then that makes me happy. So episode 30 out today. Who knows? Will it grow? Will I get some money for it at some point? I don't know. And it was never in the plan. So it's never been my driving force. But I am loving meeting people and getting the opportunity to speak to these different people.
And nor should it be part of your plan, David. I applaud that. If it happens, it happens. But money shouldn't be a motivator for most podcasts, unless you've got the connections and the money up front to be able to turn it into something super premium. Then for most of us, you've absolutely nailed it. And I'm gonna admit something here live, well, not live because we'll be recording for a couple of months ahead. But my mum is a follower of my podcast, so mum, hiya, glad you're watching. I'm not gonna lie, I forcefully signed her up in the beginning because I wanted some extra subscribers. But my mum does watch every week. She watches it after she's had her dinner on an evening. She's very lost sometimes by some of the conversations that we have, but she loves watching. Oh, it's nice. My mum watches my show. I like that.
I pause mum.
So yeah, by all means, David, forcefully sign your mum up. You'll be very surprised how educated she gets about podcasts once she starts watching. But so yeah, I guess thinking about everything that you've learned since moving into your own business and all the advice that you give to people, the work that you now do with individuals stuck in their roles. And as somebody who worked in discount retail, right, like I know there are a lot of people who are in the wrong job for them and they're desperate to get out. I was one of those people once. All I could ever see myself doing was more of the same for a different company, for a different brand. And I honestly thought that everybody on LinkedIn was, I'm going to say it out loud, sorry, mum, was full of shit. I genuinely thought it was all smoke and mirrors, and it was the only people that were successful were the ones that already had money to start with, who were trying to ram their marketing methods down our throat. I'm living proof that that's not true. However, I'm conscious that I've probably joined that band of people that I wouldn't have believed if I was in that role still. If someone's listening along today and they suspect I'm full of crap and maybe think that you're a little bit full of crap, I hope not, but maybe they do. What could they do today to prove to themselves that there is something else out there that they could be doing that would make them far happier, that isn't the role that they're doing now in a different shape?
That's a great question. And yeah, I think you're right. We are probably all full of shit in our own way. But you have to get through that. And genuine communication, genuine connections, like the type that we have, I think is very important to see through some of that. I think if you are really stuck in a role, in a job, and you know there's something else, I think the first thing to do is truly identify what makes you happy and what skills you have that could see you out of it. And I'll give you an example. I was speaking to a chap the other day, works in healthcare, not sure what to do, has a well-paid job, fairly high up, has done a master's, so has got all the right things, shall we say, that one would expect to have. Actually is really not very happy. So we had a conversation and I said to him, okay, so what is it that you'd like to do? Really, really, if you took away all the barriers, take away the money, take away what people might say, take away the fear of that change. And his eyes lit up and he said, I think I've always wanted to have a pizza that served great coffee. But his eyes shot at that thought. I was like, and that's the key. That's what you need to do.
Yeah.
And I think so many people that I speak to have somewhere deep down that burning desire, burning wish to do something, but have stopped for whatever reason. And it's about finding what that is again. And you might stumble across it. It might be something that you've always wanted to do, but never had the possibility. But when you get to a point where you're so stuck, I think you're willing to try anything to get out. And if you've got that inkling, then do something. And whenever I have a call with someone, I always offer 3 calls for people to start with. I will give them 3 actions to do because it's about moving forward. And if you're that stuck, if that rusty nail is that rusty, then you have to do something. So those three actions, it could be anything, just imagine what you want to do. What skills do you really enjoy using? Ask a friend. So I think it's really pinning down what lights you up, what gives you that joy, and then finding a way to manage it and taking even just small steps. And it's very cliche. It's very, it is what it is some of that fluff, but actually it's true. Don't take that step. You never move anywhere, and you get stuck in yourself. And then that's just that, cycle of misery. And then you make everyone else miserable. So it's about doing it for you and everyone else around you.
I think there's a couple of things that I would add to that, in that have an idea of what you want to do, but be prepared for that to change as you get closer to whatever you're heading towards. Because quite honestly, I never intended to set up a marketing company of any sort. I never intended to end up, if you told me 10 years ago I'd be working around video editing and repurposing and working with podcasts, I would have laughed so hard in your face, and I would have definitely raised my eyebrows at who I am today. But here I am, thoroughly enjoying myself. So my goal was to get out. I found a role using technology, which I love working with technology, and that was a stepping stone to where I am now. But always be listening to what makes you happy in the moment, and be looking for a way to find more of those little things that you do every day that make you much happier. My second thing would be, if perhaps you're not ready to talk to somebody like David yet, and you, like I say, still suspect that I'm full of crap, then there is a tool out there called ChatGPT. You may have heard of it, you may not. A lot of people, it's surprising how many people in corporate roles, in retail, have never even considered ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever versions on your phone. Have a conversation with it. You would be surprised at how insightful it is at identifying what makes you happy and what skill sets you have. It is there. It can be very constructive and critical thinking for you in a way that gives you that confidence to have a conversation with a real person next. And that's where I'd go with it, is try a prompt along the lines. You don't need to be an expert to write prompts in AI these days. Just try something along the lines of, I want you to act as a career change consultant. I'm going to tell you what job I do. I'm going to describe it to the best of my ability, and I'll maybe even upload your CV into it, and it'll ingest that. Conscious of data, everyone. So I'll give you that warning as well. Like, you upload something, it's theirs. But feed that information in and see what it comes back with, and ask it some questions, and ask it to ask you questions. And maybe that's a good starting point for a lot of people who are thinking about it but aren't quite brave enough yet, or haven't committed. Because the other thing that I would say to people is, you need to be in the right point in time to make that pivot. If you're still dithering about doing it and you're thinking about it, but then you never go and do it, when is the right time? When are you ever going to do it? Got to find a point in time, and there will never be a perfect moment. You'll never be able to afford it. You'll never have loads of money in the bank as a comfort buffer so you can go and do it. And quite honestly, if you did, you wouldn't make a success of it. Sometimes just doing it by the seat of your goddamn pants, getting out there and being terrified, is what actually
100%.
makes you successful.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I love it. David, thank you so much for what has been a wonderful, I genuinely love helping people with careers and things like that as well. I don't want to make it my job, but I love hearing the passion that you have for helping people. And I'd always encourage anybody, if they're interested, to go and talk with you.
Thank you.
I will make sure your contact details and everything from Via Nova are in the show notes. Is there anything that you'd leave the audience with before we end the episode?
First of all, thank you. Thank you for the connection that we've made and the friendship that we've made as well. And I think what I would leave people with, and to touch on your point, is allow there to be that human connection. Look through the fluff on LinkedIn or any other platform. And you said then that allow things to change and be prepared that things might change. It's amazing when you give yourself the opportunity to be open and free of constrained thought, the opportunities that present themselves to you. I never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing, much like yourself. But I let myself go. I just give myself permission to be free, as it were. And it's amazing what you find works. podcasting is just another example. Never thought I'd do it, and yet here I am. So give yourself the opportunity to enjoy something and see where it takes you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your wise words today, David.
Thanks,
That's
Paul, for the
fantastic. And I will see all of you. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you give us a follow. We'll see you next week on MarketPulse Pros and Pioneers. Thanks for joining us for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to feature on a future show, or you've got some ideas for folks who would make a great guest, please drop us a line. Contact details are in the show notes, and I'd love to hear from you. Your host today was me, Paul Banks, founder at Javelin Content Management. Here at Javelin, we specialise in helping busy business owners just like you to repurpose video content, taking all the stress and tech problems away and turning your long-form video into literally hundreds of pieces of content without breaking the bank. We describe it as getting ideas out of your head into video and out to your socials. If you want to launch your personal brand, become the vendor of choice for your audience, or maximise your sales revenue impact, we'd love to hear from you. Join us next Wednesday for the next episode, and don't forget to subscribe and give us a review. Our podcast is only possible with your continued support.